When a child has no father standing beside him, the world notices. Some notice with compassion, some notice with pity, and some notice with calculation. I did not understand that at first. I thought adults helped children because children needed help. I thought when someone said, "Come, we will take care of you," it meant safety. I thought a house with more people meant more protection, more food, more warmth, and maybe less loneliness. But life taught me that a door can open like kindness and still lead into pain. That was how I entered the house of other people. Not because I wanted to leave what was familiar, not because I was searching for adventure, not because I was ungrateful for my mother's love. I entered because life had become heavy. My mother had carried too much for too long. She tried to be everything. She tried to be mother and father, shelter and provider, comfort and discipline. But no human being can become two people without losing pieces of themselves. I saw her tiredness, even when she tried to hide it. I saw it in the way she sat down after a long day. Not like someone resting, but like someone whose bones had been carrying invisible stones. I saw it in the way she smiled quickly when I looked at her, as if she wanted to cover her exhaustion before I could feel guilty. I saw it in the way adults spoke around her, telling her what she should do, where she should send us, who could help, who could take us in, who had enough space, who had enough means, who could raise us better. Those words sounded practical to adults. To a child, they sounded like being moved from one hand to another. I did not know what was being decided for me at first. I only knew that conversations became longer. My mother's silence became deeper. My brother's face became more serious. People came and went. Advice entered our home like wind through cracks. Some said it was for my good. Some said a child needed stability. Some said my mother could not do everything alone. Some said relatives were supposed to help. Some said other people had more resources. Some said I would be treated like their own child. That last sentence stayed with me. Like their own child. It sounded beautiful. It sounded like rescue. I wanted to believe it. Maybe somewhere inside me, I hoped that if I could not have my father's house, I could at least have a house where I belonged. Maybe I hoped that other people could fill some of the empty spaces he had left. Maybe I thought kindness from strangers or relatives could soften the absence that had shaped me. So when the time came, I obeyed. A child rarely has power over the roads adults choose for him. I remember the day I left. The morning felt ordinary, but my heart knew it was not. Things were gathered quietly. Clothes were folded. Small belongings were placed together. I watched hands moving around me, preparing my departure as if preparing a wound to be covered. My mother tried to look strong. I think mothers do that when they are breaking inside. They straighten their backs. They adjust their voices. They give instructions about small things because the big thing hurts too much to name. She told me to be respectful. She told me to listen. She told me to work hard. She told me not to forget who I was. She told me that everything would be fine. I wanted to believe her, but there was something in her eyes that made me afraid. Not because she did not trust the people completely. Maybe she did. Maybe she had no choice but to trust them. Maybe she was praying that their kindness would be real, but I saw a mother letting her child go because life had cornered her. That kind of goodbye is different. It is not the goodbye of someone who wants distance. It is the goodbye of someone who has been forced to share her child with the world because survival has demanded it. As I left, I looked back more than once. The house I was leaving was not perfect. It had pain in it. It had absence in it. It had unanswered questions, but it was ours. It carried my mother's voice. It carried my earliest memories. It carried the smell of the life I knew. The house ahead promised help, but it did not know my heart. When I arrived, everything felt strange. The walls were different. The sounds were different. The rhythm of the house was different. People moved as if they knew exactly where everything belonged, and I stood among them like an object placed in the wrong room. At first, they welcomed me. They said the right words. They told me I should feel at home. They told me I was not a stranger. They told me I would be treated well if I behaved well. That condition hid inside the kindness, if I behaved well. I did not notice it immediately. Children hear welcome first. They understand conditions later. For a few days, maybe even weeks, I tried to be perfect. I woke early. I answered respectfully. I watched how others behaved so I could imitate them. I tried not to ask for too much. I tried not to look sad. I tried not to make anyone regret taking me in. That is another burden fatherless children often carry. They feel they must earn the space they occupy. A child in his own home can be noisy, tired, hungry, playful, stubborn, and still belong. But a child in the house of others learns to measure every movement. I measured mine. I measured how much food I took. I measured how long I sat. I measured how loudly I laughed. I measured how quickly I responded when called. I measured my face, my steps, my breathing. Because deep inside, I knew I was not fully theirs. No matter what they said, I felt the difference. Their children could make mistakes and remain children. When I made mistakes, I became ungrateful. Their children could rest and still be loved. When I rested, I was lazy. Their children could ask questions and be answered. When I asked, I was difficult. Their children could cry and be comforted. When I cried, I was reminded that I should be thankful. Thankful. That word began to follow me. I was told to be thankful for the roof, thankful for the food, thankful for the clothes, thankful for the school, thankful that someone had agreed to help me, and I was thankful. But gratitude should not be used as a chain around a child's neck. Help should not become a weapon. Kindness should not demand silence in return for shelter. At first, I did not understand why my heart felt heavy. I had food. I had a place to sleep. I had adults around me. I had what people called support. But I did not feel safe. Safety is not only walls. Safety is how people speak to you when you make a mistake. Safety is whether you can be tired without being accused. Safety is whether your tears are treated as pain or disrespect. Safety is whether you are allowed to be a child. In that house, I learned quickly that my childhood had conditions. I could be accepted if I was useful. I could be praised if I was quiet. I could be tolerated if I did not disturb anyone. I could be included if I remembered my place. My place. Nobody always said those words directly, but I felt them. My place was not the same as the place of the children born there. They had roots in the house. I had permission. There is a difference. Roots grow naturally. Permission can be removed. And because I knew my place depended on permission, fear entered me. I became careful in a way no child should be careful. I listened for moods before entering rooms. I learned which footsteps meant anger. I learned which silence meant someone was about to shout. I learned when to disappear. I learned when to work before being asked. I learned when a face that looked calm was only holding back criticism. I became skilled at surviving adults, but survival is not the same as living. At night, when the house became quiet, I thought of my mother. I wondered whether she was sleeping. I wondered if she missed me. I wondered if she believed I was happy. I wondered if I should tell her everything or protect her from the truth. Many children protect their parents from the pain they themselves are carrying. They do not want to add weight to an already tired heart, so they say, "I am fine." Even when they are not fine, I said it too. When someone asked, I said I was fine. When my mother wanted reassurance, I gave it. When adults praised the people helping me, I lowered my eyes and remained silent. Because what could I say? That the help hurt? That the house had food but no tenderness? That I had shelter but no belonging? That I was learning to smile like someone grateful while breaking like someone unwanted? I did not have the words, and even if I had them, I was afraid no one would believe me. People love simple stories. They like to say, "These people helped that child." They do not always ask how the child was treated after the door closed. They do not always see the insults whispered in kitchens. They do not always hear the comparisons. They do not always notice the extra work placed on small shoulders. They do not always understand how a child can be fed and still be starved of dignity. In the house of other people, I learned that mistreatment does not always look dramatic from outside. Sometimes it looks like discipline. Sometimes it looks like correction. Sometimes it looks like teaching gratitude. Sometimes it looks like a child being told again and again that he should remember where he came from and who was helping him. The words were often small, but they entered deeply. I was reminded that I was lucky. I was reminded that my mother could not do everything. I was reminded that my father was absent. I was reminded, directly or indirectly, that without their help, I would be nothing. That was the part that hurt most. Without their help. Those words made me feel like my life was a debt I could never finish paying. And every time I felt that debt, I blamed my father again. If he had stayed, I would not be here trying to earn kindness. If he had stayed, I would not have to swallow humiliation for shelter. If he had stayed, I would not be measured against children who belonged. If he had stayed, nobody would dare remind me that I was being helped. The house of other people became another room in the prison of my father's absence. Even when he was not mentioned, he was there. He was there in every command that felt harsher because I had no protector. He was there in every insult I swallowed because I had nowhere else to go. He was there in every moment I wanted to run home, but knew my mother was already carrying too much. He was there in every night I cried silently and hated myself for being weak. I began to understand that abandonment does not end when the father leaves. It multiplies. It sends a child into places he would not have needed to go. It places him under authority that may not love him. It teaches him dependence on people who may use that dependence against him. It makes him vulnerable to kindness that has conditions. And because of that, my blame grew stronger. I did not only blame my father for not being with me, I blamed him for where I had to be because he was not with me. That difference mattered. The house of other people taught me many things, but not all lessons are gentle. It taught me to wake up before others. It taught me to hide pain. It taught me to obey quickly. It taught me that people can call you family and still treat you like a guest who has overstayed. It taught me that a child without a defender must become careful with every word. It taught me that love and control can wear similar clothes, but it also taught me to observe strength, not the loud strength people praise. A quieter strength, the strength to continue, the strength to remain respectful when you are hurt, the strength to remember your worth when others speak to you as if you are less, the strength to survive a season without allowing it to become your whole identity. At that time, I did not know I was becoming strong. I only knew I was tired. I did not know the same pain would one day help me understand other wounded children. I only knew I felt alone. I did not know the humiliation I endured would one day make me value dignity more than applause. I only knew I hated being reminded that I depended on others. There were moments when I wanted to disappear. Not die, just disappear. To become unseen, untouched by expectation, free from the constant need to prove that I deserved food, shelter, and patience. I would sit alone when I could, in a corner or outside, and imagine another life. In that life, I lived with my father. He was not perfect in my imagination, but he was present. He came home. He asked where I was. He noticed when I was quiet. He stood between me and anyone who tried to harm me. He did not allow others to treat me like a burden. He did not allow anyone to use help as a whip. In that imagined life, I did not have to be grateful for being tolerated. I belonged. Then the imagination would fade. The real house would call my name. There would be work to do, instructions to follow, moods to survive, and I would return to the life I had. A child can live in two worlds, the world he endures and the world he dreams of. My dream world had a father. My real world had his absence. As time passed, the house of other people changed me in ways I did not immediately notice. I became quieter. I laughed less freely. I learned not to show excitement too much, because joy could be interrupted. I learned not to show sadness too much, because sadness could be mocked. I became polite, but inside I was wounded. I became helpful, but inside I was angry. I became obedient, but inside I was asking why love had to feel like labor. Sometimes people praised me for being mature. They did not know maturity had been forced upon me. They did not know that some children become well-behaved because they are afraid. They did not know that behind my silence was a heart-collecting pain. And again, I blamed him. Dad. The name came back like a shadow. Every time someone treated me as less, I saw his absence. Every time someone reminded me of their help, I felt his failure. Every time I wanted protection and found none, I accused him. The first blame had already entered me in episode 3 of my life, but in the house of other people, it grew roots. Before, I blamed him with thoughts. Now I blamed him with experience. Pain had given my accusation evidence. Still, somewhere deep in me, the child who wanted a father had not completely died. That was the strange thing. Even while I blamed him, I wanted him. Even while I accused him, I imagined him rescuing me. I would sometimes picture him arriving suddenly at that house, Not as a weak man, not as a man full of excuses, but as a father. He would enter, look at me, and immediately understand everything I had not said. He would see the fear in my eyes. He would hear the pain beneath my silence. He would know that the child standing before him had been surviving, not living. Then he would take me away. He would say I was his child. He would say no one had the right to humiliate me. He would say he had come too late, but he had come. That fantasy comforted me. It also hurt me, because he never came. Not then. The door did not open. The footsteps did not arrive. The rescue remained inside my imagination. And because it remained imaginary, my anger became real. The house of other people became part of the story I would one day tell him. When he would finally return, years later, I would not only see the man who left, I would see the consequences of his leaving. I would see the houses I entered, the words I swallowed, the fear I learned, the dignity I fought to keep. I would want to ask him if he knew. Did he know what his absence cost me? Did he know that other people held power over me because he had not held responsibility? Did he know that I had been treated like a burden by people praised as helpers? Did he know that a child can be sheltered and still feel homeless? But those questions belonged to the future. In that season, I was still living inside the wound. I was still learning the difference between help and love. I was still learning that not every roof is a home. I was still learning that a father's absence can send a child into rooms where his soul must fight to survive. The house of other people was not only a place, it was a lesson, a hard lesson, a lesson that taught me why protection matters, a lesson that taught me why presence matters, a lesson that taught me why a father's role cannot be replaced by pity, charity, or reluctant assistance. A child needs more than a place to sleep. A child needs belonging. A child needs dignity. A child needs someone who sees him not as a responsibility passed from hand to hand, but as a life worth guarding. I did not have that then, so I became my own witness. I remembered the tones. I remembered the looks. I remembered the instructions that felt like accusations. I remembered the meals, eaten with caution. I remembered the nights when tears stayed trapped because crying could make things worse. I remembered the word thankful being used until it felt heavy. I remembered how help became another form of suffering. And I remembered the father who was not there. The man I still did not know. The man whose absence had followed me into another house. The man I blamed more deeply with every passing day. Years later, people would praise the edifice I built. They would admire its beauty, its height, its strength, and its place in the city. They would say I had achieved something great, but few would understand that before I learned to build with stone, I had learned to survive inside houses that did not feel like home. Few would understand that before my father became my cornerstone, his absence had made me feel like a child with no foundation. Few would understand that the dream of building something strong came from years of feeling unsafe. That is how dreams are sometimes born. Not from comfort, from lack, not from applause, from humiliation, not from belonging, from the pain of being treated like someone who could be moved, used, corrected, and reminded that he was dependent. The house of other people gave me suffering, but it also gave me a secret hunger. One day, I would build something where no one could make me feel like I did not belong. One day, I would stand inside a place shaped by my own sacrifice. One day, I would no longer live by permission. I did not know how. I did not know when. But the seed was planted in the house of other people, in the place that promised help and taught me pain. In the place where I learned that a roof can cover your body while your heart remains outside in the rain. And under that roof, as a child still searching for a father, I carried one sentence like a hidden flame. If my dad had stayed, I would not be here like this. That sentence burned quietly. It burned in the morning. It burned at night. It burned when I obeyed. It burned when I smiled. It burned when I said I was fine. And with every day that passed, the flame became stronger. I was still young, still wounded, still hoping in secret, but something inside me was changing. The house of other people had shown me that absence could become exposure, and exposure could become suffering, and suffering could become blame. So I continued growing there, under someone else's roof, carrying someone else's rules, eating someone else's food, and swallowing someone else's version of kindness. But inside, my heart kept looking for the man whose face I did not know, the man whose name I carried, The man whose absence had placed me there? My father? The one who was not there to protect me. The one I would one day have to forgive. But not yet. Not in that house. Not while the wound was still fresh. Not while every act of help felt like another reminder that I had been left. Not while I was still a child, learning that other people's houses can shelter you, feed you, and still make you feel painfully alone.